Welcome to the Humanity in the Loop podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hampton. My guest today is Carlos Sentís. Carlos is the founder and CEO of the World Innovation Alliance, a board member at the World Humanitarian Forum. He's a member of the Steering Committee of Higher Education Innovation at OECD and presidential advisor to the Organization of Young Entrepreneurs of the European Union. This is on top of lecturing at 21 universities and business schools, providing training at dozens of corporations and speaking in over 300 speaking engagements around the world. Today we're going to discuss the breathtaking scope of Carlos's goals and how he built the World Innovation Alliance to meet them. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's a great honor to be a part of your show. It is wonderful the work you're doing, and I am happy to contribute to it.
Thank you. I'm delighted. So, Carlos, what are the challenges and opportunities you think will most impact humanity in the next 20 years?
What a question. That's the question, I believe. Well, I would say there's a number of challenges that have to do with the fact that we are moving towards a world of a lot of geopolitical tension, a lot of radical transformation that is accelerated by technology. And is this uncertainty and this chaotic nature of the future that awaits us that makes it very difficult to predict, but also it makes us aware of the possibility of all sorts of conflicts that may emerge. I would say one of the things that I am the most concerned about is when economic crises lead to violent protests that could lead to escalation of violence inside of a country, and that can spread to other countries, for example. So I believe that chaos can allow for new opportunities to emerge. But at the same time, normally when there's big transformation, there's times of social pain. And I think that we're going to go through a transition of social pain, especially because of AI, that is going to be difficult for some part of the population. And also, if we don't figure out the geopolitical relations, if we cannot find common ground and collaboration between the different powers that exist in the world, I think there's going to be more problems than needed. And those can come from, again, economic instability. It can come from all sorts of angles in terms of peace and lack thereof. And all of that obviously has huge effects in global poverty and all of the negative effects that has in general for the world.
You touched on AI. Can you zoom in a little bit on that? Because on the one hand, people are expressing terror, and on the other hand, delight at the possibilities that come from it. What do you see as the opportunities and threats there?
Well, I think AI is the greatest multiplier of good and evil that we have ever invented. It's absolutely remarkable what you can do with it. And when you are looking at how can you create solutions for a problem, and you can actually create millions of variations so you can find the optimal solution for a problem that really matters, from climate to health issues. It is outstanding because humans are limited and we tend to think that we are very intelligent, and you have the collective intelligence of big organizations and entire sectors moving towards that direction. But there's nothing you can do in comparison to the pattern recognition capabilities of AI, for example, right? So we cannot predict in the same way that AI can. We cannot do lots of the things that technology and AI can. And therefore, I believe what's happening is that we are expanding dramatically the capacity of humans. And what that's going to lead to is probably a lot of great and a lot of awful news, because bad actors can use AI for anything that they wanted to do before. And that means that terrorists, criminals, is any number of bad actors. It doesn't matter if it's for their personal interest, national interest. It can be doing illegal things, immoral things. It doesn't matter the channel, and we can talk exactly about how they can do more harm with AI than without it. The reality is that they have extended powers in that sense. Mm-hmm. So what I think is going to happen is that we're going to have an incredible time of disruption. It's going to be a cascade of continuous disruption. I don't think it's going to come as a one-time situation where suddenly we go from the pre to the post-AI era. I think we are already in a situation where everything is changing faster than people realize and people get to understand. And we're getting closer to the concept of singularity, that even if you don't want to define it, or even if you define it in different ways, or even if you think that you're not getting there technically, it is true that the speed at which everything is advancing And the acceleration of innovation is just making it impossible for normal humans to catch up. And even AI communities don't know exactly how to deal with all of this information. So my point is that with all of this transformation and the acceleration of innovation and the greater capacities that humans have, you're going to see a huge battle between, I would say, good and evil. And you're going to see how there's lots of battles between regulators and both companies and bad actors that are trying to look for the spaces of opportunity for them to do their thing. And what I think is going to happen eventually is that we are going to have a situation of extreme inequality. I think that that's one of the biggest consequences that we're going to have, because those who use AI and those who use it effectively, not only those who have the supercomputers to train or the supercomputers to leverage it better, not only the ones that have the biggest amount of data, the best quality data, it's not even about that anymore. It's about how much do you use whatever is available at whatever level. It can be defense, super secret service level. It can be just what we can use with ChatGPT Plus, for example, and whatever versions we have of that in future. If you use that effectively, you're effectively multiplying yourself times 1,000 or whatever you want. And even Sam Altman said that he's expecting that scientific output per year is going to be 1,000 times more than now. And we have like 3 million patents per year. There's 4,000 papers on AI every month. So it's just multiply that, and it's just crazy. So both for the scientific breakthroughs that are going to lead to great solutions to, for example, end all sorts of health problems and extend longevity, to bad actors being able to not only create disinformation campaigns to cause havoc, but they can actually effectively destroy critical infrastructure, both with cybersecurity attacks or just connecting the digital and the physical world. That there are many ways, and people don't think too much about that. And they can actually create wars easily, or they can win wars, or they can extend conflict where there was not. So I am extremely concerned, because I think what's going to be the new norm, as you know, the world pre-COVID and post-COVID had some differences. And what happened at that time is that lots of things that were extremely unheard of, unprecedented, and impossible to even conceive suddenly were the norm, right? So an entire city is in lockdown, an entire country is in lockdown. This airport is closed. The number of things that suddenly become mandatory, the way different countries are dealing with it and so on, that was all unprecedented. Mm-hmm. And that was the new normal. And suddenly it is going to be normal, I think, to have every day news that are going to be what it would have been the cover of Time for the whole, decade. I think there's going to be that every day. So it's going to be both this absolutely out of the blue war that no one was expecting, and this incredible scientific discovery that cures all of cancer, and that happening every time, every day. And that's going to make a lot of people very confused. A lot of people make a lot of money. A lot of people, I believe, are going to be displaced and are going to be in a very difficult position to actually catch up with it. Both regulators catch up with the level of technology, but also individuals to be able to catch up with those who are using it, and companies that are not using AI to those that are actually using it.
So one of the possible reactions to this is to take a harder look at education and value education more, and think about how to change it to react to this. You are a member of the Steering Committee of Higher Education Innovation at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. What education innovations are you most excited about?
Well, thank you for that question. I think the topic is relevant. We don't tend to talk enough about it, and I'm really happy that you brought it up. I think the single biggest issue that we have with education is that we have this traditional paradigm where there's information that was scarce, that if you get that information, then magically you will get to create economic prosperity for yourself, and you will have the kind of culture that you need as a citizen, right? The problem is that was pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-Google, pre-Wikipedia, and definitely pre-AI. Now, the availability of information is something that we already take for granted. It was not the case before when this system was designed, and it was important, and it has created a lot of great things in the world. But what people need now, and I'm not even saying kids, I'm not even saying young people, I'm saying what every single human needs right now, including retired people, definitely people that are working in companies and may lose their job or may need to change their roles. What we need is to be able to adapt to the change that is going to inevitably come. We need to be useful to someone. We need to be in a position in which we can provide value to someone, so there's some sort of economic exchange that also benefits us. Because the idea that education has nothing to do with economic prosperity makes no sense, right? You go to school and you hope that you go to university and maybe you have a good job and maybe you do the business school thing. So maybe you have a better job or maybe you create your own company. But there is this relationship between education and actually having a job or making money somehow. And what I am wondering is, with all the opportunities that you can find or create on the internet, right? All the entrepreneurship opportunities, from building a startup to freelancing to creating a small company to intermediating. There's a million things that you can do to make money, and yet none of those are taught in schools or universities. And most people lack the basic notion of how to manage the economic situation in their household, for example, or how to make money, how to create value for others. What are things that are useful in the market right now or that could be useful in the future? So the thing that I am the most excited about, or the thing that I am, I believe, advocating with the biggest passion on, is precisely the importance of skills that can allow you to create economic prosperity and value for society, right? And those skills that are, to me, very clear, to any entrepreneur, are very clear. What you need to be able to do is clear, and yet lots of people seem to be very confused about what skills are in the first place. So there's a difference between theory and action, between knowing information and knowing how to do stuff and actually execute stuff that is going to create some outcome. So things like, for example, the ability of creating a project, of finding clients, of serving customers, of doing communication, public speaking, negotiation, money management, investment. There's a lot of things that every single human should know a little bit about, and definitely digital skills. It's not about banning ChatGPT, because you're not going to be able to ban all of AI in all of the tools that is going to be there present with the API or whatever it is. So you're going to absolutely need to be able to leverage these tools, as previous generations were able to leverage the calculator, or they were able to leverage the Wikipedia or Google. You have these tools. Now, the level of sophistication of the market, the level of competition is all growing. And so you're not just going to be magically perfect by using ChatGPT. A lot of people are going to use it as well. But the question is how kids, young people, and people of any age can use technology and use information. How can they use connections? How can they create a life and a setup for their projects in their career that can allow them to guarantee economic stability, again, as entrepreneurs, as employees, as government employees, I don't care, but there are ways to make money. There are ways to improve yourself that are clearly practical, and those can be taught very easily. And we have plenty of examples of people that we're mentoring all over the world, that when you tell them a few ideas about how to be an entrepreneur without the risk, how to create a small company where you don't have to invest money or you don't have to have an office, for example, and you can do it from home, they suddenly realize that they are much more in control. And even if they need a few years to start making money, they can create entire careers for themselves and be completely independent. So that is my biggest focus. It's not because I think money is everything, it's because I think money is important for everyone, no matter what. And we need to connect what we learn to our actual capacity to be independent and be able to create economic prosperity for ourselves.
It's clear from what you've already said that you have a very global perspective, but here we are, we're talking, and I can see a reflection off the glass door in the background. You are in beautiful Spain. What made you take a global perspective rather than focusing on these issues in Spain?
Well, thank you so much for the question. First of all, I have always felt a global citizen. I have always been interested in other cultures. When I was, I think it was 22, 23 years old, I went to China to just travel for a little while, and I came back. I studied the language. My wife is Chinese, but besides my wife being Chinese and being able to speak the language or whatever, and be careful, I'm sorry, there's a fly over there. Besides that, I have always been interested in other cultures, in other religions, in people from other sectors, other departments. So, each one of us have a different personality, and my personality is very open. I'm very extroverted, and I have always recognized that the world is very big. And I started my career as a journalist writing about international relations and about problems that were happening all over the world. And the world is big, and there's a lot of people that are not in the best situation. And it is my understanding that we have to do the best we can with what we have to try to make the world as good as we possibly can, right? And so if I have one idea, one model, one strategy, one policy, one contact, something that I can do to improve the life of as many people as possible, I'm going to try to do that. And the idea of narrowing it down only to one country because I happen to be Spanish or be European, that doesn't make that much sense to me, especially because I think that the actual places where more help is needed are precisely outside of Europe mostly.
So you mentioned your wife. I read with interest your work in the Spain-China project, but you have your own Spain-China project going, which is your marriage. Did you meet before the project, or did you meet because of the project? Or did you decide to make the project together?
So I decided to learn Chinese after coming back from China because I thought there was a huge potential of learning from the innovations that were taking place there. I saw that China was misrepresented many times, and I just wanted to understand what was happening. And after being there for 7 days, it became clear to me that there was opportunities, right, in all fronts. And so after learning the language, I got to meet her. I was literally talking to every single person to just try to practice the language. And I met her, and we started a company to create bridges between the West and China to make sure that, first of all, we help people with that connection, because it was difficult. There's barriers of all kinds, from actual, real, tangible conflicts of interest to cultural barriers to lack of information or whatever. And what we did was to try to help companies and institutions to see if there's some common ground in some mutually beneficial opportunities. And we did that for a while. And it was very useful and very important for us because it allowed us to not only service many companies and institutions from different countries, but also learn from different sectors, learn from working with governments, companies, celebrities, influencers, media, associations, all sorts of types, all types of stakeholders. And that has been exactly the base for what we're doing now, which is our capabilities that we've been developing all these years now are being put to use at a global scale. When we felt that we were ready to do something global, because before I have been always in this very, very slow path to just add a little bit of complexity to my work, until I realized it seems that we are not aiming high enough. If there's something we can do to make the world better, or there's something that we can do to foster economic prosperity, education, or whatever it is, we have to start already working in the global scale. Because even if we are super fast and super successful, we're going to need 5 to 10 years to even start anyways. So we might as well start already. And that's what I've been doing these years.
So in preparing for this episode, I did review a lot of the material about you online, and I discovered that you are working with your wife, who's a accomplished project manager and an entrepreneur in her own right, Zihan Ki. And you two have a baby girl. Congratulations on that. How has that changed your perspective on what you're doing in the world now?
Thank you so much for those questions. These are amazing questions, and this is wonderful. I really appreciate it. I hope I can reverse that and actually spend more time talking about you as well. But thank you for those questions. And well, it has changed everything. It's crazy because I have always been proud of being a super rational, cold person that analyzes everything. Oh my God, everything is different. First of all, she is now the priority, obviously, and it becomes difficult to have the same level of ambition to try to make social impact all over the world when you know that you have a very tangible, direct responsibility towards one person. And one thing that is teaching me about leadership, I was thinking about that in the morning, is you can't be a leader if you don't lead someone that you're responsible for their life, right? It's like you're really not a leader if you don't actually have all the responsibility. Because one thing is that you tell someone what to do, and if not, you fire them or whatever. But the real deal of leadership is you having all of the influence. Of course, we were having this conversation of Max before. You have definitely to accept the fact that you can't change many things that come, from genetics or personality or whatever. But you do have a lot of influence over them. That's clear. And you have more influence over them than probably a boss has over any employee, right? For good and for bad. And so what I realized is that, we're talking about leadership all the time and how to improve leadership of government, international organizations. Like, well, you have to start somewhere, and you definitely want to make sure that you understand responsibility at its fullest. And so that has changed dramatically, because one thing is the theory about this can be better this way. The other is, if you're able to execute that with success at home, first you lead yourself, that you can lead somehow or co-lead your family, and you can execute and practice all of the things that you preach, but there has to be this huge connection with the actual results. And the reason why I say this is many times leaders detach themselves from the impact that they generate, right? So they become cynical because it's not their problem. They don't want to make it their problem, or they are just having meetings, they're making decisions, and then someone loses their job somewhere else and they don't see it. Sometimes they do see it, but it's like, don't bother me. I am in my meeting, or I am speaking in a place, or I am being important somewhere else. And I think that the connection to the results of your work are very important. And by the way, one of the things that I have always been extremely afraid is if you become a leader, imagine, or you're working as a CEO of an airline, well, you have a huge responsibility. And I have always admired people that are in charge of people's lives, even if it's indirectly. And I have always thought that leaders that are not actually caring that much about those outcomes of their responsibilities, of their decisions, that is not the leadership that we need in the future.
So I read your beautiful tribute to your father and his influence on who you are today. Do you imagine your daughter will follow in your footsteps?
Well, thank you so much. I don't expect anything. I'm really trying to not expect anything. I have lots of ideas of what I want to do with her, for her. I am planning all sorts of activities, and I'm trying to be useful, and I'm trying to be a good role model. We're all flawed, and I'm definitely very far away from being perfect, or even from being as good as my father was. But I'm trying to be a good role model, and I am not expecting her to follow anything that I do. I want to create resources, vehicles, opportunities, or at least principles and mindsets that allow her to be independent. Well, I don't know when I'm going to die. I may die tomorrow. I would love to share a lot of beautiful experiences with her over the years, but I know I may not be there. And so I'm going to try to make her as resilient as possible, because I know that, again, change is coming. There's lots of problems in the world. Life is difficult. Even if you're in the most, in the best conditions, still life is difficult. Humans can invent problems even when you don't have them. Therefore, if she has the ability to adapt, to learn new skills, if she's interested in people, if she's interested in developing herself, and she has the capacity of facing challenges, then I can feel relieved. But in any case, I can just only try to act in a way that I think is appropriate for her to see some of the ideas, and definitely share with her ideas that could be useful, but she probably will do exactly the opposite.
In the short term anyway. So you mentioned inventing problems, but your specialty is inventing solutions. And one of the mechanisms for that is the World Innovation Alliance. Can you tell me more about it and its goals?
Well, the World Innovation Alliance is my response to the assessment that we have of the current state of the world, where the world is going, and what we see as these siloed organizations, siloed departments, separate countries, separate stakeholders that have no coordination, because there's no organism that is focused on that. There's no company or institution that I have ever seen that has as a mandate to try to see how can we leverage to the best of our ability the resources that we have to make things better to the best of the capacities that we have, right? So you could say that maybe the UN has that capacity in some way, but still, if you look at exactly what each one of the agencies are doing, it's not exactly to see how can we use all of the resources that we have and actually go and execute solutions directly, right? So what I thought was, okay, whatever I do, I'm going to absolutely be limited by the people that I surround myself with, the organizations that I work with. And I am probably going to be more a problem than a solution, if not now, in the future. So I need to design something that can be inclusive enough that every single individual or organization in the world could potentially contribute to it, that can be useful enough so it can just provide value, even if it's for free, even if it's without engaging. It needs to be as useful and practical as possible. And it has to be something that has the ability to execute independently, because every problem is our problem. That's the way we see it, right? And every problem that is not solved in the world is our problem. Now, right now we're losing, right? 1 billion to 0. But the idea is that you assume full responsibility for everything that happens. You try to prioritize what are the biggest problems and what are the potential solutions that could have the biggest effect. You look at what are all of the stakeholders that could potentially contribute to the solution to that. And you try to look for what are the best models and ways that you can align the interests so people are actually interested in going and doing something that, if not solve the whole problem, at least can improve the solution slightly in a way that is measurable and clear. So an example of that would be, we believe that education is important. We've been discussing that. We think that there's going to be a lot of upskilling and reskilling needed in the coming years. First of all, there's a lot of people that don't have access to proper education in the world already. And with all the changes, probably we need other types of education and more. So what is the most effective way to train as many people as we can in the shortest intervention we possibly can? And that question, I haven't seen other people formulate it like that. And so you have normally scholarships. So you give a scholarship to one person that is outstanding and you don't solve the problem at all. And you may say that that inspires others, but that just makes for a really good picture, right? You take a photo and that looks good. And I'm not even saying that you don't have to take the picture. I think it is important to do that. I'm saying we have digital tools. We have people on the ground that would love to be useful. You have incredible content already. You have all sorts of resources all over the place. Companies that want to look good because they actually care or because they just want to look good. And with all of those resources, I am pretty sure that we could educate hundreds of millions of people, if not tens of millions, in just a week if we coordinate it properly, right? If you have a program that is launched by a government saying, we are going to provide an official certification from the government to everybody that learns this thing in this week. And we want all of you to at least know the basic fundamentals about AI so our country is not behind and so you can find economic prosperity for yourself. And this module is going to give you ideas on how can you make money outside of our country so money comes to us, for example. And that's perfectly possible. It's very easy. It's good for the country. It's good for the government. It's good for everybody involved. Zero money investment. So that kind of thing is what we see that is possible in all fronts, right? It can be from digital economy to digital identity, like MasterCard is doing, how to better leverage all of the volunteer days of companies, that they have incredibly talented people that instead of using their skill set or the things that they care about the most to tackle the biggest problems they can face, they are just doing these small little activities that look good and they have fun and it looks like we have done it. And so my problem is never with nothing that no one's doing. Everybody's trying to, figure out how to live and you have to make money. People have their own ambitions and I understand all of that. But what I say is sometimes people are not doing more or they're not providing more value to the world because they just don't know that there is a way to be more useful. They don't know what is the solution. They don't know how to be more effective. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at what are all of the solutions and models that can be used, what are the best practices that people are using, what are the best policies that we can advocate for, and how can we all collaborate in a way that all of us have our own proper benefits, because I want everybody to do well, even if it's not connected to WIA. Our organization is the smallest thing in the world, and it can continue to be the smallest thing in the world forever. But we definitely needed a vehicle. We needed a vehicle to bring people together or to organize events or to launch campaigns or to do whatever. But again, this is not even the issue. The issue is there are solutions. There are a lot of people that want to help. There are a lot of people that are greatly talented. And many times those are disconnected. And one example that people tend to understand is if you care about the environment and we agree that it is good to plant trees. We may not, but let's say that we agree on that. Then you can either go and plant a few trees in a random place, or you can talk to the best experts, identify what is the place where the planting trees would be most effective and most useful for whatever. But also, you look at what are the best ways to coordinate with other organizations and other people. And you use technology like, for example, drones that can plant up to 200,000 trees in one day. So you do your thing, right? You plant your trees, you take your picture, your company is great. You can do it with others, without others. But just because you have that technology, you have done 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more. And the last example is, if you think about what programmers can do, or engineers, or even people that are great at supply chain and logistics, there's a lot of problems of logistics in the world, right? There's lots of problems in drug delivery, right? Or all sorts of water, energy problems in Africa or elsewhere. And if you had, imagine all of the hundreds of thousands of employees of the largest companies in the world that are experts in putting products everywhere in the world without any problem. Whatever happens, there's a war, whatever, there's Coca-Cola there, right? Whatever is happening, there's Unilever products there, there's Procter & Gamble there. So these guys are really good at that. They know how to, solve any kind of situation so they can actually get things from one to the other. Okay, can we use the volunteer day to ask them to coordinate with some other teams that are also really smart at that? What is the best possible thing to unlock now based on the SDGs, for example? Or there's several teams, one for drug delivery, one for whatever. And if you look at that in that way, just using the volunteer day effectively, they are going to be much more motivated because A, they know how to do what they do, and they know what they're doing is extremely meaningful, and so they can engage with. So both volunteering, with impact investing, with social entrepreneurship, with actual, social or scientific contributions from individuals, companies, it doesn't matter. Everybody has this pulsion towards trying to be useful, if not constantly, at some moments in their life. Everybody has some sort of tendency towards trying to, of course, take care of yourself, but also this idea of trying to hopefully be somehow valuable for society. People have different ideas about what that looks like, but if we could give the right solutions, the right tools, and coordinate efforts, I believe we can create a better world. And that doesn't have to be this idealistic utopia. I'm talking about educating people that were not educated, or creating some jobs, or improving some people's health condition because we have arranged something better than it was. That's what I mean.
So how can someone contribute to or participate in the Alliance?
Well, there's a number of ways. If you have solutions, models, strategies, best practices, we want to know, because we definitely want to be aware of what are these tools that are going to be useful, so then we can advocate for their utilization. If you happen to be an organization that has some sort of capacity of executing, let's say you have a company, you're a government, you're an NGO, maybe we can share with you some of our ideas to execute more effectively, to save money and actually create a greater impact in whatever was your goal. If you're looking for training on impact maximization, innovation leverage, AI leverage for good, all of those things, we can provide that. And also one of the things that we care about very much is this collaboration between different parties, and especially if it's international, multidisciplinary, especially when it's breaking the silos, as I was mentioning before. So you have all of these vertical conferences where people in one industry talk to people in their industry about their industry all over and over again. And not only the biggest commercial opportunities are in the other spaces, probably for you, but also if you actually start collaborating with all the other stakeholders, if you're private and you start talking to the public and to the media and to NGOs, whoever you are, you definitely have a lot of value to gain if you collaborate with the other parts. So whoever you are, we're happy to introduce you to other parties that probably can help you advance your goals. And maybe you can join our initiatives on skills for growth, our advocacy on how to leverage AI or how to prevent some of the risks of AI. All of those things that we're doing and the things that we will do in the future, we definitely need support, and we're happy to engage in ways that are mutually beneficial.
Who are the Alliance's ideal clients? How do you generate revenue?
Well, there's a number of ways, and we have two entities. One is the World Innovation Alliance, that is more the institution and the organization, and then there's ImproveX, which is our execution branch, and that is a consultancy, it's an executive training firm, and it does a number of things. And so whenever we have to execute, that's ImproveX. Whenever we are more an organization, putting things together, doing events or preparing reports and things like that, that's more WIA. And our clients and our partners have always been large companies and institutions. And the reason for that is because we have always tried to do collaborations where there was a potential for greater impact. And we know that if we collaborate with big actors, then they can actually influence their other stakeholders. So for example, the other day I was lucky enough to do a session on AI opportunities and risks for United Nations Global Compact. And what happens with that is that they are in touch with the CEOs of some of the largest companies in the world and government officials. So if they have recommendations on what can be done, then that can get there. And even if it's only a small fraction of the ideas, even if it's a small message once that someone says to some other person, that with large organizations can influence a lot of people. Whereas if it's only to individuals, we have less leverage. Now, what we do for individuals is actually mentoring them and providing free resources and trying to create opportunities for them. And I have personally mentored many people, and our network has more than 1,000 experts in 150 countries. So what we try to do is always be ready to engage and mentor whoever needs support and speak about things that can be useful for them. And also some of the projects that our members are doing are just extraordinary. You have thousands of people being trained on AI and blockchain in Kenya, and more than 125 startups that have been funded with John Kamara, with other labs. You have thousands of girls that have received all sorts of support with Lakshyam in India. You have Bangladesh with Ayesha. We have people from Colombia to you name it. So all of the work that they are doing is on the ground, trying to be as useful as possible based on the local reality. And so that is a big part of what we do through the network when it comes to who do we help directly, but who do we collaborate with, who do we partner with is normally large organizations. And another example of the people that we work with from L'Oreal globally, we work with PricewaterhouseCoopers, with Radisson Hotel Group. We have worked with a number of organizations in different countries. We have worked with governments from Liberia, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan. We have worked with Spain, Portugal, European Union. And then now I'm going to go to Colombia to speak to the national police forces of 16 different countries to speak about some of the risks of AI and how to prevent that. I'm going to go to Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, and Ivory Coast to doing some trainings, also for universities and schools. And then I will go to China also to discuss other collaboration opportunities. So again, we try to collaborate with large organizations of different sectors, collaborate with them in a way that we're useful, but they can also do something else. And we try to be close to every space of activity and every country, because we know that you may solve something in your local community here in Spain or in Canada or whatever, but there's people all over the world that are suffering. And so the idea is, how can you minimize suffering and improve lives?
So as you decided to build the alliance, what skills and how did you build your network, your skills, your experience to be ready to build the alliance?
Well, I will start by saying that no one is ever ready to, and I am not ready at all for this. Okay, so I would love to say I am not.
Or at least having the courage to try. How did you get ready for that?
What I would say is I've been preparing this for 5 years. I plan to work on this for the rest of my life. But just the preparation of the roots of it's been 5 years, full time. And so just to show how slow I am, maybe, or the how much I care about doing things right, because this has to be the roots for something that should grow despite all of my mistakes. So I realized that when I was 18 years old that I was wasting my time, and that I was extremely lucky. I had these amazing parents. I was living in Spain. Everything was, sunshine, and yet I was wasting my time. And so I decided to become always, to challenge myself always to be at exam every single day, right? I was examining myself at all kinds of skills and all kinds of knowledge. And so what I've been doing all these last 15, 16 years is I created a dashboard in Excel that has like 1,000 variables, and I am just measuring myself like a video game character, right? So I'm looking at how well do I speak in Arabic when I'm doing an introduction in a round table.
I saw that. Egypt 2019, was it?
Well, I've done a number, but again, I suck at Arabic, so that thing says that I am not good at it, right? If it says
it sounded good to me.
How well do you speak in Spanish? Well, better than in English. Okay, that's clear, right? So those skills that I've been identifying as useful tools for me to do what I'm trying to do, and that has been expanding, obviously. And so the more work I've done, the process I told you before, we started small and then we kept doing and doing and doing. And I realized that, well, events are important and communication is important, and understanding the nuances of the political interests and the political groups inside of an organization, or the differences between one ministry and the other, or funding and grants, and those things that you don't know, or how impact works, or who is doing what exactly, and who cares about what exactly. How do you deal with different sectors, or how do you deal with different levels, and how do you sell B2B, how do you sell B2C, how do you use digital channels? All of those things have become evident when I was clearly failing at everything I was doing, right? So I'm trying something, it doesn't work. Okay, I may need to learn something about this. I may need someone to help me with that. And that has been a process that, of course, is infinite, and that I still struggle with a lot of what I have to do. For example, I have to learn a lot more about policymaking. I have to learn a lot more about peacemaking, right? Actual conflict resolution when there's multiple factions of terrorist groups that are connected to countries and whatever. Intelligence, right? How do you deal with the defense? And how do you balance defense and allies when sometimes they're actually enemies in different fronts? So there's a lot of complexity in the world. And one of the things that I came to understand is that if you break things into smaller parts, if you break problems into smaller parts, or goals into smaller parts, or skills into smaller parts, you can actually learn some of those things. But the world is complex, and you have, I believe, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't think you can solve any complex problem by just making it simpler, looking at it through the perspective of, let's be optimistic about it, right? It will solve, because humanity has solved it in the past. It's like, people looking at every detail were able to solve it. No one can solve it by saying, you think about it too much, or you worry too much, or you work too much. That doesn't solve the problem, that's for sure. And I believe in order to deal with the complexities in the world, in a world that is more interconnected than ever, where AI is making things even more complex because there's more of everything. There's more technologies that are going to be created. And then every technology can connect with every sector, every problem, every solution. So everything is going to multiply. They say it's a double exponential. So everything is going to be crazy. And it was very difficult to catch up already. And the reason why I say all of that is, for me, and I think for everybody else, in a world that is increasingly complex, what we need is to look at the details and actually be nuanced. And it's not black or white, you're with me or without me. It's more, okay, what is the full picture that we can grasp with our limited capacities? How can we fight our own biases? And how can we look at it from the perspective of, okay, optimism, because there's things that can be done, probably. We don't know exactly what seems to be a good idea, what seems to be possible, and what can I do now to move closer towards where we want to go with whatever we have.
So you've touched on this today, but also I've seen you write about this online. You're an advocate for learning from mistakes. Are you willing to talk about some of the mistakes you've made getting the World Innovation Alliance off the ground?
Oh, yes. Great. We have a lot. We could do an entire session all about that. The good thing about having conversations with either old friends or new friends, I am so happy to be in touch with you now, and I love your energy and the way you research. You're amazing, and I'm speaking to you more as a friend, and I think it is important to be open, because I don't think it is possible neither to hide a lot in the world that we're in right now. I don't think we have privacy anymore. And one recording of me or one thing that I wrote or whatever can be leaked. So I tend to be very open. And this is a long preliminary, but I wanted to say is like the amount of mistakes that I have made strategically have been crazy. So for example, I started thinking, okay, so here's what's going to happen. since I have been successful so far, I have worked with many companies so far, and I clearly can do stuff already. I am going to bring everyone together, and we're going to do impact because people care. I know that some people won't care. I know that some people won't recognize other people's efforts. I know there's going to be all sorts of political things, but in general, if you talk to people of international organizations, governments, companies about tools and keys to maximize your ability to create impact in the world, they're going to be so interested that everybody's going to come and we're going to sit together and think, what is the best way we can all work together? And in 2 or 3 years, we're going to do this massive global thing with everybody together, because how could they not want to be in this? That was the first assumption. Again, with limited, it was not so naive, but it was more about, there is very few professional impact maximization here, right? There's people do things. Some people work on stuff, and definitely there's a lot of people on the ground and Doctors Without Borders and great NGOs, great foundations. But it seems like everything is not as effective as it is in the private sector, right? Imagine if you have all of the brains of all of the people that are investing, and they were thinking how to do the best possible effect in poverty alleviation, not in making more money. So that was the reasoning behind it. And I thought, people are already making some money. Maybe there's ways they can make money and make impact. So the first assumption was, even if we're not hyper successful, people will tend to come. And what happened was, in order to be successful in whatever you're doing, you have to just have one thing, be super clear, have one product, and hopefully if you're doing something on social impact, if you're not an NGO, it's going to be extremely confusing for most people. And so you either are an NGO and you go that road, or you are a company and you just make money and that's it. So that was the first thing. I don't even know if that is a mistake or just a mistaken assumption.
Challenge.
But that happened.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is, okay, no, we need to split, right? So we have the company, and when we need to generate revenue, we do our services, and some people may buy one or the other service, and we have the organization. We don't expect anyone to join. We do our work, because eventually, whenever we are useful enough, everybody will join. And in fact, that happens. But that's one example of problem. There's just many others that have to do precisely with the trying to innovate too much is a problem. And I think that happens to a lot of people also, that you innovate before the time has arrived. And so the whole thing doesn't work. And that has happened in technology with people working on stuff 20 years prior, right? And it didn't work, and then it was successful afterwards. And so if you innovate in one thing, let's say we do education, but with this little twist, people will understand. But if you innovate the concept of organization, the way you work, the way you deliver, and you have all these different types of experiences and the education materials, and so if you innovate too much, people lose you. Because people are not looking for innovation. People are not looking for solutions for the world. People are not looking for most of these things. People are very, very concerned about their very short-term KPIs. And if you're not exactly targeting that KPI, and if you're not an expert on that KPI for the last 12, 20 years working in that sector, most people are not going to listen to anything you say. And so it's not about the quality of the idea, the quality of the model, the potential of the solution, or the capacities that you demonstrate. It's more about, do you only do this for the last 10, 20 years? And can you say what you want in one sentence? Mm-hmm. And again, both because of my personality, maybe my inability to shorten things, or because I believe things are complex as hell, it's difficult. And if you look at what the UN does, or the World Economic Forum does, or what Google does, and you look at all of their divisions, would you say that is simple? I would not say that is. But when you're doing something new, you can't be already, you can't already have an extended vision. People only accept if you only have these very limited things. So I don't care, because I believe I need to see the vision of the ecosystem that we want to build, and then create everything the way we want. But the actual laws of the market, the trends, the format where, the format in which you do your social media promotion is going to matter. So I don't want to change the way I write because that's not converting. And I don't want to invent a hook because it's sexy. Or I don't want to repeat what is working for others. I want to write my thing, because if I'm writing something that other people have said, then I'm not providing any value. So just go watch him, right? And so the reason why I'm saying all of this is because sometimes you do what you believe is right, or you do what you believe it's useful or necessary. But if you are too away from what works and what is the proven methodologies and the proven success stories, if you're too away from what people understand directly, it's going to be tough. And what I try to do now is, except when we have interviews like this, where people ask me about everything and I'm trying to be open about the actual vision, in general, I don't talk about the vision. In general, I just say, we do trainings on leadership like this. Do you want a training on leadership like this? Right? And I just say that, because if I say something else, they're going to think I'm crazy. So that would be the biggest, if not mistake, I would say the biggest problem, the biggest barrier. And if anyone is doing anything complex because they believe in it, or they're building an ecosystem that I believe is going to be extremely important for the kind of economy that we're going to have, because it's more difficult to disrupt an ecosystem than just one little tiny thing that can be replicated by GPT. If you're going in that direction, try to simplify and make your message extremely concrete to just one stakeholder. Say what they're going to understand. Don't expand too much, and don't innovate too much.
Okay, I think that's very useful advice. And this whole conversation has been fascinating. You've been very generous. I do have one final question. It's a personal question, but I have to know. As I researched in preparation for this episode, I was stunned by how many projects you're involved with, how often you appear on stage, in front of a crowd, with a microphone, dressed in a suit, everywhere in the world. I have to know about how you keep your energy levels so high. What's your secret?
Well, Tim, being extremely honest, I don't know why the connection is this way, but I'm just being totally open, even more than other times. I am exhausted. I don't have energy at all. I am tired. So here's the thing. I am someone that cares about people enough to, if I am interacting with you, I try to get all of the energy with you and try to be useful in this engagement that we have, right? If I am mentoring someone, if I am in another country, I have to do something. I'm with someone. I try. If I have a client, when I have to deliver, and I definitely want to make sure that they get what they need, but also that we can create this long-term relationship, because I know at some point we will be able to collaborate for WNA. So because of that, I need to, and I try to be very focused when I'm doing stuff, and I try to get all of my energy there. But it is very true that many times I stop doing a project, I come back or whatever, and because we have a baby now, and I feel as if everyone in the world has a lot of energy. I see a lot of political leaders, for example, that they are traveling every day, and it's like, I wouldn't be able to do that, right? That's how I feel. So thank you for having that idea. But what I would say is, care about what you do. That's for sure. Try to sleep as much as you can. That's for sure. And then obviously you have to be very mindful of how do you use your energy. So one thing that I try to always look at my physical and mental state. And if I think I am exhausted, for example, and I think I'm going to actually crash if I keep pushing, or if my eyes hurt, I try to not look at the computer. If my brain is not moving, I try not to have to think. If I don't think I'm going to be productive, I allow myself to, get the day to do something else. And I think that looking at your body and your mind and protecting it. I don't drink alcohol at all. Don't do drugs, any of those things. Not because I have a problem with them, but because they don't help me. And so I just don't. I would definitely benefit from doing more exercise. I gained a lot of weight and life is complicated. But again, the idea is, A, I'm not that energetic. But secondly, if you care about what you're doing and you're always looking at protecting your energy, because it's the best thing that you can keep. If you have energy, time is way more valuable. Sometimes you have time and you don't have energy and nothing works.
Carlos, thank you so much for sharing your energy with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. You're fantastic, and it is a great pleasure.
My guest today was Carlos Sentís. The World Innovation Alliance website can be found at wia.world. Thanks again, Carlos, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks for listening to the Humanity in the Loop podcast. The opinions expressed by the host and guests of this podcast are their own and do not reflect those of their employer or any other affiliation. Humanity is not automatic.